People often say that networking is everything in the music industry. And while that's not 100% true, it's maybe 90% true. It's very, very important. And what people often don't say is that networking is something that takes years, and they have to be very fucking patient about it. Handing out your business card to a random person at NAMM might feel like you're networking, but it's a very low level and often risky version of it. That's what I like to call short play networking. Short play networking is really good if you're already established and have an immediate solution for someone's pressing problem. It doesn't work too well if nobody knows or cares who you are. Let me tell you how I used long play networking to book my first signed band when I had 0 connections, 0 track record, and ran a studio out of my parents' basement. I started my first studio sometime around 2001 and was recording lots of terrible local bands, mostly for free. This was a good thing because I had no idea what I was doing. They were practice. By 2003, I had a better idea for how production worked, and I started to want to focus on taking over the local Atlanta metal market, but none of those bands would come to work with me. They didn't know who I was, they didn't care who I was, and there were already entrenched players they were recording with. So I started thinking and strategizing about what I could do that would get all the bands to just collectively change their minds and come to me. I had a feeling that if I could make my place seem like the cool place to go, then I would stop getting the cold shoulder. The answer I came to was that I needed to somehow get either a signed band or a local tastemaker into my studio. There was no other way, so I dove into the local scene to see what I could find. After many shows and hours spent reading liner notes, I came to the conclusion that I wanted a local record store / label called Deathgasm Records to notice me. And not only did I want them to notice me and take me seriously, but I needed everyone else in the scene to notice that Deathgasm noticed me. So how to do that? The idea I came up with was a party. Yeah, a party. But it wasn't just a party. I had heard that there were these 2 young bands that had some buzz who were about to embark on their very first US tour. Just by luck, I knew the drummer for one of them because I had played with him at Berkeley. I knew that this was key to my party. I called him, told him that I wanted to book the Atlanta show at my studio, that both bands could stay there afterwards. I would feed them, pay them both $250, and promote the hell out of the show. These bands alone would have been enough to get people to come to my studio, but I wanted to seal the deal. I set up 5 kegs and put the word out that anybody who came got a free weed brownie. It worked. I got 100 people from the local scene at my studio, including the Deathgasm guys. But by the way, the bands were Osiris and Ion Dissonance. Everyone had a great time, and by the end, at least 10 people told me they were going to come to record at my studio. Guess what happened next? Fucking nothing. None of them booked. It was disappointing. But I also knew that meeting people once isn't enough. I had made a great first impression, but then I needed to keep showing up until it clicked. So that's what I did. I kept showing up. In the case of Osiris, what developed was a legitimate friendship, and as a result of that party and how well I treated them, they were very generous towards my band. Remember my last Career Builder Show episode where I talked about all the regional touring my band did? Well, it was thanks to the relationships I had built with the bands like Osiris. Anyways, 6 months later, Osiris invited us on a 5-day tour with the small but badass Maryland death metal band called Misery Index. I say small now, but at the time they seemed like fucking rock stars to me. Want to know the best part about finally getting to meet and hang out with Misery Index? I already knew their drummer too. I had hired him on a studio session 2 years before that. We were already friendly. Over the course of the tour, they mentioned that they really wanted to make an EP, but they didn't like how their previous record sounded, and they couldn't now because they had no budget. I threw out that I would do it for $400. Nothing happened, but we remained friends and went on a few more of these short tours together. The offer remained on the table, but I didn't push it. Instead, I just focused on having a great time on tour with them and try to become real friends. To this day, 15 years later, I still think that Jason Netherton and Sparky Voiles are some of the greatest people I've ever met, and I would still let them stay at my house or help them out if they were ever in need. Back to the story. A year went by, and the 2004 Maryland Death Fest was coming up. At this point, I was balls deep in handing out DOTH CDs. That year, I decided to go to the Maryland Death Fest and hand out 1,000 CDs, You can imagine how stoked I was when I saw that Misery Index were playing. They totally crushed their set and hung out with me like I was part of their crew. We had a killer time, and right as it was ending, Sparky came up to me and asked if that offer was still on the table. They had a Southeastern touring run coming up and would love to stop in my studio for a few days after to record that EP. Boom! It took around 2 years from the first party up until the Misery Index EP, and it was all worth it. If I had punished them and been too intense about them recording with me, they probably would have gone somewhere else. But the fact that they hung out with me multiple times in multiple situations, we got along great, and the price was right, well, you put those together, and that landed me my opportunity. That EP crushed, and from there, the rest fell like dominoes. Osiris did finally record with me. The Deathgasm guys did send me work. How all that went is a completely different story worthy of another video, but in conclusion, be patient and play the long game. I could give you 20 other stories of times that things worked out well for me and followed the exact same pattern. The takeaway for you guys is simple. Real relationships are what land you real gigs, and they take real time to develop. Patience and consistency wins. Don't expect your career to take off after going to 3 or 4 shows or sending a handful of emails to potential clients. That's just not how it works. But know that all your work will pay off. It always does. It may take longer than you want, and it may not play out exactly as how you envisioned, but if you put real effort into long play networking, know that you're building the foundation of a badass career. Don't listen to that voice in your head that tells you it isn't working and you should give up. Fuck that voice. Here's some questions for you to think about. Who are the like-minded people you could be forging stronger connections with now? Don't worry if they don't seem important enough. What could you be doing to bring those people together with you as the hub? What seeds can you plant now that might grow into a giant oak tree 2, 3, or 5 years down the road? Thanks for watching. This is Eyal Levi, and this has been the Career Builder Show.